Deion Sanders was on the Dan Patrick Show, Colorado head coach, and he had some opinions on his issues with NIL currently in the world of college football.
Only thing I don't like is them to put the bag before the game, because the game always has to come first. Chase the game. Like, if you chase greatness, the money's going to come. Don't chase the money, because greatness don't come just because of the money. The money comes because of the greatness.
But there's part of you that's old school, I would think.
Very much so.
But then you have to be new school.
Well, I got kids.
Yeah.
That keeps me in touch with society. That keeps me in touch with who's who and what's what and how these kids think and how they get down. They keep me on point. So a lot of coaches, they be detached from reality of what's transpiring in college football and life. I'm not, because I have kids that keeps me on point.
So his point, that was Deion Sanders on the Dan Patrick Show, talking about how he doesn't like the idea that kids are putting the money before the greatness. Okay, if you're 18 years old, though.
What do you expect?
Yeah, like if somebody's offering you $50K, I mean, yeah, you could sit there and say, well, this situation's better for me and I'm going to go get drafted. But some situations are rough and they're looking at $50,000 going, I never seen that much money in my life.
Right.
And maybe they make a decision that does alter their future, but in the present, where they're at currently at that moment, I can understand the move.
That money can be life-changing for that person at that moment. And I understand the point they're making. Like, you want to make a decision where, the pitch for Notre Dame is always 4 for the next 40, right? Like, you're making that decision for 4 years of your life to get your degree and everything else. And there's a lot of truth to that because of the network and everything else. But that's not the day and age we live in now with NIL. And I think we'd all agree there needs to be more parameters and guidelines, all this stuff put on it. But you're not putting the toothpaste back in the tube with NIL. It's here to stay, and it's about creating more frameworks around how we're trying to kind of, shape this moving forward. I don't blame kids for making the decision for money, right? To me, that's more of like the adults in the room need to find a way of safeguarding all this.
Yeah, I don't know. I get what Prime is saying in theory and in principle, but how do you put anything in front of the bag? Because if you really think about it, are you really putting what you're doing in front of the bag, or are you looking at it as, this is what I've been able to do, so therefore I have the opportunity with how NIL is now to get the bag?
Right.
If you think about it, if it's a high school kid, then if that person is getting offered financial gain off of that, and they're seeking that and they're looking for that, and that's motivating them, it's because of the fact that they're in demand. You don't have NIL kids that aren't in demand.
Right.
So you have, in essence, put what you do in front of the bag. It's just not maybe in front of his bag. It's maybe because you're coming from high school, you're behind his bag, but you nonetheless, if you're going to get the players that you may want to get and you want to keep, you're going to have to pay to keep them at this point.
What kind of numbers have you guys heard being thrown around to kids coming out of high school?
Kids will get paid 7 figures.
I've heard for my own kid what some of the numbers are. It's not 7, but it's 6.
Yeah, there's a lot of being paid, 5, 6, 7 figures, top end.
How could you turn?
Like it's like it's like a really, really nice number too. Yeah. A couple of them, they're pretty consistent.
What's wild about it is like it's kind of a crapshoot, right? Texas A&M was a school that allegedly had put in a lot of NIL funds to get the best recruiting class, and we saw obviously how that worked out with Jimbo Fisher. They couldn't win, and a lot of those 5-star kids went elsewhere. They took the bag and they decided to go elsewhere. So however much they got, that's the risk that I think you take in this world too. It's one of the reasons why you can't sustain the model of NIL the way it currently is, because it's funded through really alumni, and even if you say through corporations, because there's not a lot of corporate spending.
Mm-hmm.
We're here at the Super Bowl. If you're going to spend advertising dollars, marketing dollars, you'd much rather have an NFL athlete, a professional athlete at that level, which has greater reach. When you have 200 million people are going to watch the Super Bowl, they think. You'd rather have someone at that level than someone at the college level. And it's no disrespect to the college. It's just it's the ROI that you get for it.
Mm-hmm.
So really what's funding a lot of the collectives and funding NIL is alumni. It's private donors. And that's just not sustainable. Like, they've got to find a way of getting to a revenue share. And how it's probably going to happen is, the football will break off. They'll pay a licensing fee back to the university. And then the players will be able to have some structure where they're sharing the TV revenue with that team, because it's now it's part of the school, but it's not. So there's a lot, to be sorted out, but there was a basketball team that actually just won a lawsuit. Was it in Pennsylvania, VAR? Someone just won a lawsuit.
I did see that where they're able
employees.
out to unionize with what they're doing. I forget exactly where it was, but that did take place. I would also add to the conversation that with the portal being so prominent in what's going on, it's a really, really turbulent mix. It's just a bad mix. It's a bad mix, and the more I'm seeing what's taking place with NIL and how it's so not what people think. It's just not what people think, and looking at how these schools are trying to raise money and sustain money. It's just really come down to, and this was an eye-opener for me, because I've heard the opinions from other sports like wrestling and, volleyball and stuff like that, which there's not as many players, but nonetheless, they don't subscribe or do anything within NIL. It's all based upon what they've always done, which is they donate to the school. The school then donates that money to the sports. So I don't know where this all goes. I don't know how you structure what's going on to be governed well enough at the college level, because there's just so many schools. There's so many moving parts that it's hard. Like, how can you create a pro model for something that there's too many? Like, how many sports teams? What's the highest number of teams, franchises in a pro model, in a pro situation?
32.
Like, is that the most?
Yeah.
Like, out of soccer, out of anything?
Yeah.
32.
Yeah, 32 in the NFL.
Think about that.
Yeah.
32. How many colleges are there within the Big 10, the Big 12, the ACC, and the SEC? That's a lot of schools, and that's a lot of kids. It's a lot of people.
So the SEC announced that each school got a $51.3 million payout for this last year, according to Greg Sankey, the commissioner there, which I think is up about $19 million from what they got the previous year.
And none of that goes into the kids.
The Big Ten is getting more than that.
I mean,
and none of that goes into the kids. Right. And yet they got people out here begging people that have regular paying jobs to support the program. And I can understand that upset feeling and that anger that casual, not even casual fans, like a fan feels as though they've done their job if they got to the venue and have gone in the venue and have enjoyed the team. Yes. That's your job as a fan.
Yeah.
Like, not to be begged for more and more money to support the school when the school is generating those types of dollars. It just seems weird.
The interesting thing, too, about I think just the conversation, as we look down the road, there's the revenue streaming aspect of it. How are they going to negotiate that? How's it going to be divvied up? Let's say you split it 50-50 in the SEC. You got 85 scholarship football players. You give all of them, right, an equal portion. That's 300,000 of the 25.5 million, roughly. It's 300,000 per athlete. So that's what they would be getting per year. Maybe that sounds like a lot. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. The hard thing for me is looking at it like, is it deserved? Do we feel like they all deserve to be compensated for that? Like, how are you applying the value of it? Because it's taboo to say it's pay for play. But that's ultimately really what it is. It's one of the reasons why I think they need to get away from this model for to LaVar's point about like privately funding it, because they need to go to a model where, yeah, they are viewed as professional athletes. That's how you're compensating them in essence. We're just kind of skirting around it because of the NCAA. But the truth of the matter is we are in a professional model. We're in that space now, and we need to get to a better space of how we go about, looking at the
And
funds.
that was part of that ruling. It said in the ruling that they had to acknowledge those athletes as employees of the university,
which the NCAA will appeal, and that'll continue to go through the court system, because we don't have federal legislation. We don't have the federal government stepping in. It's only been the courts who have had kind of to continue to create it moving forward. I do wonder if there will be a domino, if there will be a school that recognizes them as employees, and then it creates a domino effect.
The interesting thing is, if you think about the hours, how many hours in a day do you dedicate to football when you're there?
Right.
You got to get up, and you have an hour and a half or so that you got to do conditioning in the morning. Yeah. You have to go to breakfast. You then, I won't even include class, but then you come back and you have practice. That's for you have meetings and then you have the practice. That's like 2.5 hours. So you're already up to 5 hours of work before you get going. Then you have, if you're a study hall guy, then you have mandatory study hall. That's for 2 hours. So that's 7 hours, 6 hours right there in a work day. And when I tell you they control your time, they control your time. They control your time more as a student athlete than an employer does in the real world. We do our show, and when we're done with our show, we're free to do whatever it is that we're going to do with our lives. That's why I'm struggling today. Maybe I needed somebody to be, over top of me with what was going on, but
it was Dartmouth, by the way.
Dartmouth okay.
Men's basketball team.
Yeah. So it just to me,
what up, Dartmouth?
How do you continue now with where everything is with NIL? How do you and seeing the mad dash of schools going to these major conferences for the money? The whole reason why the Pac fell apart is because of the money. You're going to have to get to a place where you acknowledge these players as employees, because they are indeed using their talents, and they're using these kids' talents to generate millions and millions and billion, up in the billions. That's what they're generating with all of these athletes.